Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're tracing how a single, boot-shaped piece of land completely shaped the modern world. We're going to dive deep into the foundation of Italy, taking you all the way from its ancient origins right up to the modern era.
Okay, to really get our heads around this massive 3,000-year timeline, we have to look at Italy not just as a country, but as a giant pendulum. If you track the history of the Italian peninsula, it is constantly swinging between periods of total absolute unity and eras of fierce, chaotic fragmentation. And the wild part, both of these extreme swings produce some of the most important developments in human history.
Here is our roadmap for tracing this golden thread of unity versus fragmentation. We'll cover 1. Antiquity and the Roman Empire. 2. The Middle Ages and city-states. 3. The Italian Renaissance. 4. Risorgimento or unification. 5. Fascism and World War II. And finally 6. The modern Italian Republic. Let's jump in.
Section 1. Antiquity and the Roman Empire. We're starting way back in antiquity, where a diverse mix of early peoples like the Etruscans, Greeks, and Latins were eventually swallowed up by a rising powerhouse. Rome starts out as a kingdom in 753 BC. Fast forward to 509 BC, it becomes a republic, systematically unifying the Italic peoples and pushing its borders way beyond the Mediterranean. By 27 BC, it transforms into an empire, laying down the very foundations of Western culture, philosophy, and science. I mean, this was the ultimate era of unity. But, as we know, no empire lasts forever, right?
In 476 AD, the last Western emperor gets deposed by Germanic tribes. When the Western Roman Empire fell, that pendulum we just talked about, it swung hard toward fragmentation. The peninsula shattered into pieces, divided among the Ostrogoths, the Byzantines, and Lombards. And with the emperor out of the picture, a massive power vacuum opened up. This allowed the papacy in Rome to step up as a major political leader, fundamentally rewriting Italy's destiny for the next 1,000 years.
Section 2. Middle Ages and city-states. Now, you might assume that lacking a central ruler would be a total disaster for a region, but actually, it became Italy's secret weapon.
Think about it like this. While Europe north of the Alps was totally locked into strict farming-based feudal systems under centralized kings, the Italian peninsula was doing its own thing. It developed into a network of fiercely independent, oligarchic city-states. Places like Venice, Genoa, and Florence were these merchant-driven hubs that managed to keep both the Church and the Holy Roman Empire at arm's length. They enjoyed incredible wealth and relative political freedom based on really early capitalist principles.
So here is the multi-million-dollar question. You'd think division equals weakness. So how exactly did this intensely fractured peninsula manage to spark Europe's greatest cultural rebirth?
Section 3. The Italian Renaissance. To answer that, we have to look at the 14th to 16th centuries, a period that literally changed the world. The absolute core of this era is humanism. The Renaissance wasn't just about beautiful paintings. It was a massive intellectual movement. When Constantinople fell in 1453, intellectuals fled west to Italy, bringing ancient Greek texts with them. This sparked a huge rediscovery of Greco-Roman knowledge, leading to a literal rebirth, which is what Renaissance means, in art, architecture, and science. And this is exactly why that earlier fragmentation worked so brilliantly. Italy was divided into these incredibly wealthy, hyper-competitive city-states. So powerful banking families like the Medici in Florence needed a way to flex their prestige. How'd they do it? By funding absolute masters like Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo. They literally used art, architecture, and new tech like printmaking as weapons of rivalry. This intense, localized competition effectively bankrolled the dawn of the modern world.
Section 4. Risorgimento, or Italian unification. History never sits still, does it? After centuries of being pushed around and controlled by France, Spain, and Austria, the pendulum began a violent swing back toward unity in the 19th century.
This entire era is defined by one word: risorgimento. It means resurgence. Fired up by the ideals of the Napoleonic era and pushing back hard against the 1815 Congress of Vienna, which was basically trying to keep Italy carved up under Austrian control, Italians started fighting to glue their shattered nation back together.
Unifying a place that hadn't been whole since the fall of Rome? Yeah, that was incredibly difficult. It took 3 very different architects to pull it off. First, you have Giuseppe Mazzini, the intellectual who gave the movement its spiritual foundation. Then, Giuseppe Garibaldi, this wildly charismatic military leader whose red shirts physically fought for the cause. And finally, Camillo Cavour, the brilliant statesman who masterfully played the diplomatic game to make unification a political reality.
They definitely didn't always agree on how to do it, but together they finally broke Austrian dominance. All that blood, sweat, and diplomacy paid off in 1861 when the new Kingdom of Italy was officially proclaimed under King Victor Emmanuel II. By 1871, Rome was finally captured and made the capital. But here is what you really need to take away from this. This brand new unified state heavily modernized the north, but basically left the south rural and impoverished. That severe economic divide directly triggered a massive southern Italian diaspora. Millions of Italians left to seek a better life, scattering across the globe and profoundly shaping the international culture we know today.
Section 5. Fascism and World War II. As you can imagine, unification brought some severe growing pains, and moving into the 20th century, the devastation of World War I amplified those pains dramatically.
Right after World War I, Italian nationalists were furious. They felt totally cheated by the peace treaties, calling it a mutilated peace because they didn't get the land they were promised. The economy was completely tanking, inflation was out of control, and veterans came home to no jobs. Just to put it in perspective, in 1920 alone, there were over 1,800 strikes. Democracy looked incredibly fragile, with 5 different weak coalition governments collapsing between 1919 and 1922. It was a perfect storm of economic depression and social anger, paving a direct path for Benito Mussolini and his fascist black shirts to seize power. Mussolini operated under this truly chilling motto: everything within the state, nothing outside the state, nothing against the state. That pretty much tells you everything you need to know about his vision. He grabbed that pendulum of Italian unity and forced it into an absolute crushing extreme. By 1925, he had completely dismantled local democracy, outlawed political opposition, and built a totalitarian dictatorship.
Things move frighteningly fast. It starts with the infamous March on Rome in 1922, which essentially intimidated the king into just handing Mussolini power. He officially declares a dictatorship in 1925. But his obsession with imperial expansion and a disastrous alliance with Nazi Germany ended up dragging a totally unprepared Italy into World War II in 1940. And the result? Complete catastrophe. A military collapse, a brutal civil war at home, and ultimately Mussolini's own execution by resistance fighters in 1945. The totalitarian experiment ended in utter ruin.
Section 6. The Modern Italian Republic. Rising from the absolute ashes of World War II, with a destroyed economy and a traumatized society, Italy had to reinvent itself from the ground up yet again.
This post-war era was all about a deliberate, structural rejection of the past. The new leadership looked at the total ruin left by the fascist regime, which, remember, had operated under a monarchy, and ran in the exact opposite direction. The new Italy embraced democracy, pushed power back out to its decentralized regions, and went all in on international cooperation, actually becoming a founding member of both NATO and the European Union.
But wait, how did they actually get rid of the monarchy that had enabled Mussolini in the first place? Well, in June 1946, they held a massive national referendum, and it was tight. Exactly 54% of Italians voted to abolish the monarchy entirely. With that single vote, the modern Italian Republic was officially born.
But, as we've seen, Italian history is literally never just a calm, straight line. The modern republic is still an incredibly dynamic pendulum. In the 1950s and 60s, Italy experienced an unbelievable economic miracle where industrial output just skyrocketed. But right on the heels of that came the years of lead in the 70s and 80s, a dark period of intense political violence and domestic terrorism from both the extreme left and right. Fast forward to the 1990s, and you get the Mani Pulite, or Clean Hands investigation, which completely blew up the political establishment by exposing massive, systematic corruption. It has been a constant, high-wire balancing act between huge economic success and intense political drama.
Which brings us to our final thought today. From the absolute unified might of the Caesars to the brilliantly fractured Renaissance city-states, all the way to the modern democratic republic trying to hold it all together, Italy proves that history is never, ever static. It's a living, breathing pendulum. So looking at the complex political shifts happening across Europe right now, what do you think the next chapter holds for Italy? Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you in the next Explainer.